What's up, guys? You're listening to a July 16th edition of the SplashTag Podcast. My name is Matt, and today I'm joined by a guest who I've had before. Last time he was on, it was late April, right before Avengers Endgame came out, and we talked what we kind of previewed Avengers Endgame. And so I have him back on today, and we're going to discuss all things, Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's some big news that came out today. Comic-Con's in a couple days, and primarily we're going to discuss the big takeaways and just, a little our thoughts on Avengers Endgame and the MCU up until the MCU as we know. And because I haven't been able to we haven't put out any podcasts regarding Avengers Endgame or Marvel for that matter ever since that podcast actually. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest, Nathan. Glad to have him back, and just wanted to give a quick plug and a quick shout out. I'd like to think that I might have inspired him a little bit, but he's got his own podcast now called the Brunch Bros Podcast, and essentially it's him and a friend of his, and they essentially go to different. They eat out at different restaurants, different places, and they just kind of tell some cool stories and and reviews of the good food and unfortunately the bad sometimes of what they ate. And so if you haven't already, definitely check that out. Food is a universal thing. So once again, Brunch Bros Radio, give them a subscription, show them some love. But yeah, without further ado, let me welcome on my guest, Nathan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, bro. I'm really glad to be back here on SplashTag. I appreciate the plug for Brunch Bros, and definitely you're a big inspiration, man. Doing that first podcast with you, I was like, this is super fun, kind of something that I wanted to get into. And so, yeah, it's been a blast. I'm really glad to be back here. Love talking MCU, love talking Marvel with you. So let's get right into this. I'm hyped.
Yeah. So the breaking news on the breaking news that I saw a couple hours ago is actually that Thor 4 is in development with Taika Waititi, who directed Thor Ragnarok and plays Korg back at the helm, and Chris Hemsworth would be returning to the role of Thor. So I guess to start off, quick reactions to that.
Thor 4 with the same director as Ragnarok. I think it's gonna be a blast. Some people didn't really like how Thor was super, he was kind of the laughing stock, I guess, the comedic relief in Endgame a little bit. To me, making him Fat Thor, quote unquote, I thought it was pretty cool. You don't see a whole lot of superheroes who are, for lack of a better term, overweight. He was definitely not in his healthiest, ripped, six-pack abs, Chris Hemsworth, classic Thor that we're used to seeing. But I thought it was pretty funny given how serious the tone of Endgame was. I do have to say that, there were some points where I wish that, it seemed like Thor was almost holding back the plot, or, it seemed like he could have done a little bit more in terms of, his power and his strength. But overall, I think that it works out really well, and I was a huge fan of Ragnarok and how they've changed his character. He was getting a little bit dramatic, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it felt a little bit
Shakespearean.
Exactly what I was about to say. Shakespearean. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. And so I'm really hyped for Thor 4. I saw that on Emergency Awesome. We put the little 4 in the OR. So that'd be
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely in agreement with you in a lot of that. Initially, when I walked out of Endgame, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little later in the podcast, but I thought that the potbelly Thor, as I call him, I thought he was being played a little too much for comedic moments. But now that I've had kind of time to step away and kind of think about it, I do think it's a cool way to explore that character and give him, a very a surprising but very rewarding arc. So I definitely really like that. what I think is really interesting is that it looks like Thor is going to be the only original Avenger that's going to have like movies, his own film set beyond Endgame.
Yeah.
And I'd be very curious to just see like what kind of story they're gonna tell. Like, is it gonna be with the Guardians of the Galaxy because of how Endgame ended, or is it going to be like a redemption story of him trying to once again help the people of Asgard, whatever the case may be. So,
do we know what the release date of Thor 4 is? Did they say?
No, we have no idea. And we have no idea at the moment. I would assume it's not for at least another couple of years, considering that this is just that it's been green. This news today was just that it's been greenlit.
That's true. So definitely that would come out after Guardians 3. Is that right? Or
yeah, I would think so. I would think so because that's already like the script's element for that.
Gotcha. The As Guardians of the Galaxy. I think either way, though, we're definitely going to see that in either Guardians 3 or Thor 4, in my opinion. But who knows? They might throw us a curveball.
Yeah, and another interesting note is that Thor would then be the first singular character to get 4 solo movies.
Oh, wow.
Because Iron Man and Cap topped out at 3. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was the right decision, but just for what it's worth, he'll be the first character to get 4. Because the only time Marvel's hit 4 is with Avengers, but that's obviously.
Oh wow.
Obviously an ensemble. So. Yeah. So I guess kind of moving on, talking about, kind of like I said earlier, wanting to talk about the big film that we saw a couple months ago in Avengers Endgame. So. You and I, obviously, we've talked ad nauseum about this movie and how we felt about it. But the first question I want to pose to you is it the number one? Is it the best movie that the MCU has produced?
Is Avengers Endgame the best movie that the MCU has produced? Wow, that is a big way to start it. Personally, I think so.
Okay.
And, I'm probably going to sound like a big fanboy here, but, dude, I mean, the end, that final battle, like, that was mind-blowing, man. Like, to see Cap hold Mjolnir that was sick. And just, I think they wrapped it up really, really well. I know me and you, I've pulled your leg here and there about calling Cap selfish and all that, but jokes aside.
You're not, Yeah. Go ahead.
All jokes aside, I think they really, really, no pun intended, they capped him off really well, given that ending, and on top of that, like, me, I am a big Iron Man guy. I've been a Stark fanboy for a really long time, and to see him, I know a lot of them, like all the characters in the movie were the heroes of the story, but to see Tony make that sacrifice, given that he launched off the MCU with Iron Man, it was a really, really cool and emotional and I think rewarding send-off for those characters, for the two big papas of the MCU.
Yeah. Wow. So I can't believe you're going to come on this podcast and say Cap and selfish in the same sentence. I'm a little bit.
Like,
I know it's all in good jest, but I actually want to say so. I guess if I were to answer the question, for me, this is a total cop-out answer, but I really think I need to be a little more removed from all this in the MCU before I really definitively say, this film is the best of this franchise. But what I can say is that when you look at the story, when you look at Infinity War and Endgame, and you look at them together, and I really don't mean to be cliche, but it really is something that truly is unprecedented, incredibly epic, something that should have failed in terms of just what it intended to achieve, its level of ambition. And what's crazy to me is these two films I would deem as some of the best films I've ever seen, some of my favorite films, if not my favorite films. And they're both connected, and yet they both made me feel emotional, but for very different reasons. You know, like they're so different. I'm talking Infinity War versus Endgame, which is one thing I think makes these films like I think they're going to be, you know, defining films for this era because they are so different yet so epic and whatnot. Like, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think epic is a really good way to describe it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, do you think it's fair to say that like these are two films that are obviously very connected? Like, in a lot of ways, you can look at it as chapter 1 and chapter 2, but at the same time, they're such different films, aren't they?
They are. I mean, and when you really look at it, I mean, I think like you describing this epic is the right word, because with Endgame, like they managed to put in a whole bunch of fan service and also balance it out with the plot without it feeling cheesy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, it's very easy to mess up time travel in a movie and have it be messy and have it be just kind of silly, but they didn't. Like, the way they did it was super cool. They established the rules, and you know, like, here we are. They made an epic movie.
For me, the way I see it, when I think about these two films, I actually think Infinity War has better action / more epic, like fist pumping moments per se, because I think Infinity War moves at such an incredibly rapid pace. You're going one group of characters to another group of characters to another group of characters to another group of characters. It's like and this isn't a bad thing, but you really don't have you really don't get many opportunities to just catch your breath and just stick around in one spot. Whereas in Endgame, I feel like it was way more emotionally driven, and you were with the same characters often. The only time you really bounce back and forth between characters is in the time heist, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But
and
what
also,
I love, go ahead. No.
Oh, I was gonna say also with Endgame versus Infinity War. In Infinity War, you know, in kind of both of them, you've got teams of heroes, team ups, and just different pairs that you'd see that you wouldn't see together, obviously, unless we were in an Avengers movie. But with Infinity War, they were almost kind of doing separate missions. I know the overall end game was I don't want to say end game, but the overall end goal was to still defeat Thanos. But in Infinity War, they were doing different missions. But with Endgame, it was different teams all on the same mission, working together. So it was much more cohesive. Not to say that Infinity War was a bad movie, not cohesive, but in that regard, it was very, very, like you said, emotional, and it worked really well.
Yeah, and this might be a very unpopular opinion, but to me, what I love most about Endgame, as much as I love the final act in that battle at the compound, that's not even my favorite moment in the movie per se. For me, when I think about Endgame and like what I love about it, yes, I'll think about that battle, but I also think about, you know, and getting closure about the relationship with his dad. I think about that incredible scene on Vormir, which made me so emotional. Yeah. I think about that really cool scene in Tokyo where Hawkeye is slicing and dicing dudes, and the way it's shot and the way it's displayed, it's almost like it's an anime. Which I think is really cool.
I love that. That was sick. And even with the dialogue, you know, the in there, that was really cool.
Yeah, and there were just a lot of very emotional moments, like when, you know, Ant-Man sees his daughter. You know, I think small moments like that. That's a lot of what I'll remember in the movie, and not that the action isn't dope, because it absolutely was, but like, you know, Thor getting a chance to speak to his mother and you know, kind of and getting some clarity about, you know, his direction. So I guess I say all that to say, like, what I really love about the movie is that if you have been, like I said this on the podcast before we saw it, but like, if you have been in on this epic ride, you're going to feel rewarded for all that time, thought, passion that you put into that journey. And that's what I really love about Endgame, is that, like, yes, the action is and them kicking ass is so awesome. But it's like those small poignant emotional moments. Like, damn, like I don't know if I'll ever feel that way again. Like,
there was just
walking out
so
of the movie.
many good send-offs. I think the send-offs were epic, and I think sometimes with a movie that can get that big, it's so difficult to balance all the different character moments. And if you are gonna have some character deaths, sometimes you might think like, oh, this character so and so didn't get a good send-off, or that wasn't a proper send-off. They didn't do that character justice. But I think with all the characters that we did lose in Endgame, they got epic send-offs, and it wasn't wasted. So
yeah,
I just thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Like everyone that went out, I feel like they went out on a note that was very satisfactory.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Obviously, there's the three main. The three main send-offs, I guess we can say, in Tony, Steve, and Natasha. And they each went out in a different way, and in a way that I think kind of brought their arcs full circle.
For sure.
For all three of them. So that's what I can really appreciate. I guess the question I'll throw at you is, obviously Endgame I think is a little more contained than Infinity War. But I guess I'll ask you, it's a two-part question.
Yeah.
If you had to power rank just your top 5 heroes in Infinity War and then Endgame, what would those top 5s look like?
Top 5.
And when I say power rank, I'm just talking about their arc, their storyline, like their arc storyline in the movie, their contribution, and how you felt about them. Like,
okay.
Essentially, one way I guess you could put it is if so and so was like at a certain grade before you saw the movie, and then after you saw the movie, did they go up or down? And so like, who got the most points per se?
Okay, got you. Okay, I might hit you with three for each.
Okay.
How's that sound?
I have a 5 for each, but I've thought about this extensively.
Okay,
so
I'll hit you with a 3 for each, and then I might add a 4 and 5 after I hear yours. Because that's a good question. I like that one. All right, so we'll start off with Infinity War. Number 1 for me, Thanos, because his grade going in.
Heroes only.
Oh, heroes only. Okay. All right, let's see. We gotta think here. I thought Thor number 1 in Infinity War because he's forging Stormbreaker and he's been ripped down. Like he was already hurt in all the Thor movies leading up to Infinity War, right? Yeah. He lost so much, and for him to lose, I mean, I think he's down to like 2% of the Asgardian population because he lost him in Ragnarok, lost him in the snap, and he lost him again on that ship when Thanos attacked him in the beginning of Infinity War. And so to see him at such a low point, and especially with Thor, he came out of the gates as the cocky hero. That was his problem in the original Thor movie. And to see him at this low point, you're kind of like, wow, like you care so much more about Thor. And I also thought it was a really cool contrast because in Ragnarok is when they started to make him, quote unquote silly, right? A much more funny character. Maybe not silly is not the best word, but a much more comedic character. But then you hop into Infinity War and you're like, dang, Thor's got a lot to lose. I care a lot about him. He's got so much power. And watching in the first Avengers movie, like he almost seems a little bit OP because he's the god of thunder, right? And he's fighting these aliens, these invaders in New York, and you're just like, Thor could overpower these guys easily. But they really grounded him in a weird way because they gave him more power with Stormbreaker, yet they grounded his character still, which I thought was super cool. I guess maybe let's go 1 and 1. Like who do you have for Infinity War?
Infinity War, one's got to be Doctor Strange, and here's why.
Oh, true.
The start to finish in that movie, I never felt like I trusted him 100%. Like I never felt like he was making any bad decisions.
Yeah.
And going into that movie, I had seen, obviously we had only really seen him briefly in Ragnarok and then in his own solo movie. So I was like, okay, he's cool. Like I didn't really think too much. I was just like, okay, Benedict Cumberbatch is a good actor. Like, he does some portals and all this. by the end of Infinity War, I was actually really sad when he got dusted. Like I was like, holy shit, that dude was the fucking MVP of
Yeah.
Infinity War. You know, so
Dude,
I really thought it was a strong.
Sorry, you continue.
I was gonna say I just felt like strong performance altogether, and I just felt like he. It just made me like he was just such a beast in Infinity War that I was like, holy shit! Like that movie made me a fan of the character. Like before, I was like, okay, he's cool, but like I don't like love the character. Like to me, he was a little bit like how I felt about Thor in like Age of Ultron. I was like, okay, he's powerful, he's there. But then in Infinity War, I was like, holy shit! I genuinely like love this character now.
Yeah. And that scene where he there's like 1,000 of him, and then he does that little, that orange whip onto Thanos, like that was such an epic scene. That was so cool. I guess my next one would have to be Black Panther. I mean, what in Infinity War, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's high, but okay.
What a guy. I mean, so let me tell you why I think Black Panther, right? He gave up his homeland for that invasion. That's a big sacrifice. And you know him and the Wakandans, they've been protecting Wakanda for a long time, trying to keep it a secret, trying to keep it contained. And next thing you know, they're fighting off an alien invasion there, and he's using his armies, he's sacrificing his land. Like, Wakanda definitely got demolished by that battle, and they definitely lost a ton of soldiers. And I think Black Panther made a huge sacrifice for them. And yeah, that's why I think Black Panther number 2 for me.
Okay. I agree there. Not to be fair, in the post-credit scene in Black Panther, they did reveal themselves. Like, Wakanda did say that they were going to extend the source. But that said, it is definitely a very selfless thing to just be like, okay, we're going to let you, safeguard the stone here.
Yeah.
We're going to use our technology to try to remove it from, the android body. And we're also going to open the fucking barrier.
Yeah.
so that they have to get through all my armies, all my soldiers, all my tribes before they get to the stone. That's definitely I definitely thought I love Chadwick. I love that character. Like he was definitely an absolute G in Infinity War. Yeah. I fucking love the moment. Actually, in the theater, I remember, this is a little bit of a tangent, but like in the build up to the beginning of the battle for Wakanda, when they, as they're getting ready to open the door or the what's it, the barrier of Wakanda, and then Black Panther is screaming out the battle chants. I was in the theater screaming the battle chants. Okay, I was the knucklehead in the theater screaming out, "Ibombe, Ibombe." Yeah, and then that moment where it's like there's like that intense music, like it builds up, and then he screams one last time, "Wakanda forever," and then the barrier opens and they start charging. That is so epic.
That was so hype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
just
as for my numbers
to him, for like, because if you think about it, right, let's think about it in like a real world situation. Sometimes like you and your friends, you trying to have a good time on the weekend or something, and everyone's always like, "Oh, who's trying to host this week?" No one's really stepping up to host. But Chadwick over here, he's like, "I'm gonna host this final battle. We're gonna throw a banger. We're gonna kick Thanos' butt. Bring it on over to Wakanda." Unfortunately, they didn't kick his butt in Infinity War, but still props to him for hosting.
Yeah. And on that note, I guess you also gotta give. I'd be very curious to find out what that whole decision-making process was like, because it obviously is like implied when Steve says, "I know somewhere," when they're talking about where they can get vision, where they can go. When he says, "I know somewhere," I wonder what that conversation between Steve and T'Challa was like. It was like, "Hey, we're kind of jammed up right here." I wonder if he explained like, "Yo, there's this dude named Thanos who's on his way." Like, I would love. I know it's never gonna come out, but I would love to have seen that conversation between the two. And for me, as someone who those are two of my favorite characters. Yeah. I really love the relationship that was very subtle, but that developed between the two of them throughout the 3 movies where they were together.
Yeah, that was really cool to see.
I guess my number 2 would be Tony Stark in Infinity War.
Ooh. I like that pick.
Because he's being granted. Okay, he's being the very proactive guy because the moment he hears about that, he hears Bruce explains Thanos and everything. He says like, okay, this is it. Like, what's our timetable? And then he immediately is like thinking of ideas. You can tell he's been paranoid about this for years. The one thing that I don't like about Tony in the movie is that Tony has this in multiple movies. He does this thing where he says, basically, someone will tell him that he's like, Tony, you don't understand. And then he always hits them back with, no, it's you who doesn't understand. And
that's very true.
Every time he says that, I swear to God, he's done that in at least 4 movies. But all that aside, like, he was the nanotech, just the fact that he has that epic one-on-one with Thanos on Titan. The fact that he's kind of being like this parental chaperone to Spider-Man and whatnot, like, I think that I love all that in Infinity War. And on top of that, like, the relationship with Pepper.
Yeah.
Like, when he gets on the spaceship and then he's talking to Pepper and then it kind of like cuts off. That in that moment I was like, ooh, things are not looking good for Tony. Yeah. So like, I really like that. And Downey's always gonna crush it as Tony. So I guess that would be my number 2. Who's your number 3?
So what I'm hearing though, just to clarify real quick, is that did you just rank Tony Stark above Cap in any one of your Marvel? Regardless of what ranking we're doing here, did you just put Tony above Cap?
Yeah, and hold on, let's clarify this.
Because I
know, but let's clarify this. I'm talking about who was basically, the way I look at it is like, if I had to vote on an MVP in Infinity War, who would I put number 1? Doctor Strange. Who would I put number 2? Tony. Cap took a little bit of a backseat in Infinity War. Plus, I already love Cap so much. It's hard for me to like him even more. Whereas Tony, Tony's got ground to gain. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
But, yeah.
That's why I didn't put Tony up in there, because I was like, you know what? Like, I already love Tony. Like, seeing him being epic in Infinity War, it didn't make me. I mean, it made me love him more. But like, I thought there were other characters too. But I fully agree with him being a big part of Infinity War. I guess my number 3 would definitely have to be Vision, because.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because first of all, I thought Vision was a very cool character when he first popped up in Age of Ultron, right?
Yeah.
But to be fair, I didn't really like. I wasn't a huge like Vision fanboy. It wasn't like if I had to pick a favorite hero in the MCU, Vision was gonna be my pick. Yeah. So definitely seeing him play a big role in Infinity War, especially because he has an Infinity Stone, right? Seeing him, and he was so willing to make that sacrifice too, because he was living out a really, really good life with Scarlet Witch. Like, they were in Europe, they were chilling, they were in love.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, he's like, we've got to take care of this situation. He was always willing to make that sacrifice, telling Scarlet Witch to destroy the stone in his mind, Yeah. But definitely Vision, because I definitely walked out of Infinity War liking Vision a lot more than before I'd watched that movie.
Yeah, that's fair. For me, my number 3 is Thor, for a lot of the reasons that you outlined. But I think that Thanos aside, I think Thor has the best moment in Infinity War when he bifrosts his way into Wakanda. Like,
that was epic.
For me, nothing. I remember being in that theater, and as it was building up to that, I was like, oh my God, no, they are not. No, they are. Oh my God. So, just for purposes of kind of like keeping this moving along.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the idea of us, maybe a couple months down the road, you could do a little more planning / research, and we could have a podcast where we actually like list our power rank our characters in both movies, and then like just discuss it, because I feel like that could be a very interesting conversation.
We could have a debate. We have a hot debate about that.
Yeah. Okay. So then, I guess real quick, you don't need to do too long explanations. Top 3 in Endgame.
Top 3 in Endgame for me. Number 1, Tony Stark. He made the sacrifice. He made the snap. Got rid of Thanos and his army, and he paid the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate price. Save everyone. Number 2, definitely Cap. I mean, the man was broken apart. He picks up Mjolnir, and he's ready to fight Thanos and his whole army, like, just standing there I know all the other heroes were there, but he was like the last man standing there before the old on your left that Falcon gave him, and then the rest of the army showed up. And then I guess number 3 MVP for Infinity War would definitely have to be. See, I'm between right now. I'm between Ronin / Hawkeye and Natasha for the 3rd spot.
Okay.
Because if Natasha hadn't made the sacrifice, they wouldn't have gotten all the stones.
Correct.
But at the same time, Hawkeye lost so much, and he played such a crucial role in picking up the gauntlet after their whole base got destroyed. Yeah. So I guess it's a tie at number 3 with Hawkeye and Natasha.
Okay, yeah. I'm in agreement with you for the most part. I would also put Ant-Man in that conversation.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Ant-Man in that conversation because, first off, I just love Paul Rudd in that character. But to piggyback off your point about Hawkeye, I think what's really underrated is how much obviously Hawkeye lost his family, but obviously like they needed the Soul Stone some way, one way or another. Yes, they're both willing to sacrifice themselves, and obviously Natasha's the one that does it, which is obviously that cannot be understated. But what I think was so incredible from an acting standpoint was Jeremy Renner. Shout out to him. Essentially, like in that moment, just being able to express the amount of pain that character was going through by seeing, because if you think about it, he wanted to be the one to go, and then he was
willing.
And then he is hanging on a fucking cliff, and his best friend, who is, I feel like just the emotional beating that Hawkeye took from losing his family, then going for years as Ronin and being this vigilante, like slicing and dicing criminals, and then that moment on Vormir, like the emotional arc that character went through, I thought was crazy incredible.
For sure.
Endgame. Yeah.
For sure.
I guess
for a hot second there, I thought that he was going to be the one.
Oh, so did I. So did I.
On Vormir, yeah.
So did I. Because I'm a sucker for Hawkeye.
Yeah.
I actually thought it was gonna be him because at first Black Widow pins him down, and then when he breaks free and then shoots the arrow, and then he has the clear path, I was
he looks at her, he shoots her a look too, and I'm like, that's it, he's done. He's done.
I was like, that's it. And then that scene is honestly one of the. I really think that scene is one of the most emotionally emotionally one of the most emotionally impactful, I guess, scenes in the MCU.
I would fully agree with that.
Yeah, and as great as the scene on Vormir was in Infinity War, I think the fact that you already see what happens when you go to Vormir and try to get the Soul Stone, the fact that you see that in Infinity War, when you see it in Endgame and it's coming, it makes it that much more intense, and you're just that much more holy shit, what's gonna happen here? Exactly. One of them's gonna go, and like you said, I really thought it was gonna be Clint. Yeah.
But a what if scenario here? I definitely think having them put Hawkeye and Black Widow on Vormir was a very good choice. It's so sad to see Black Widow go, but I think out of any pair, I know we had talked about hypotheticals too, and if it was what if it was Tony and Cap there and they had to make a sacrifice between the two of them to get the Soul Stone, that would have been very interesting too. But I think they picked 2 very good characters to put on Vormir to make a sacrifice for the stone. But a what if scenario, how geek would it have been if it was Nebula and Gamora again, and then the 2014 Gamora has to make the sacrifice again for them to get the Soul Stone? That would have been so meta. But yeah, just
what I think would have been crazy. I think they picked the best combination. It was not a combination I ever expected, because I always thought that if they were going to get the Soul Stone, they wouldn't be throwing in the most human characters per se.
Right. Yeah.
But in hindsight, if you want from a storytelling perspective, that makes the best scene.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I don't know. Like you could have played with some really interesting combinations there.
Yeah,
Like you and I in our preview podcast, we talked about what about Tony and Cap? What about
exactly.
Tony? What about Tony and his daughter? What
Yeah.
about
Oh my
what
God, Tony and Rhodey,
Tony and Rhodey also?
Hulk and
Trying to think.
Natasha. Hulk and
That
Natasha would
there
be.
were there were there were there was speculation that
Yeah.
about that. Um, yeah, so I definitely think that it definitely there definitely is a little bit of a question mark of like would they really send the two human characters to the most mystic
Yeah.
essentially like and of the stones, but like that said, like you said, I think it made for an incredible scene and one that I'll never forget like ever.
For
um
sure.
like I've rewatched it and I get so weepy every
Goosebumps.
time. I get
Yeah.
goosebumps. I've never cried in a movie and I didn't cry, but I always can feel like the emotional buildup like in
Yeah.
my eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, the goosebumps. But I guess moving on. Um, so which okay, so obviously, Endgame, it did a lot for there were basically the main characters,
Yeah.
that were that had survived Infinity War, and then there were the ones that got brought back.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I know which of the main characters do you think had the most satisfying conclusion, or just Endgame? Let's look at just Endgame,
Okay. In
right?
Endgame. All right.
And I guess another question is based on the events of Endgame, which character that was brought back are you most excited to see, kind of moving forward?
Okay. Gotcha. So in terms of satisfying conclusion, see, I want to say, and I'm a sucker for Tony. I'm an Iron Man guy, right?
Yep.
And I am definitely satisfied with how they sent him off, because we knew that they had to wrap up the stories with especially Robert Downey and Chris Evans somehow, right? They had to kind of I guess like get them out of the MCU in some way.
Get them out of the main picture,
Exactly.
the main storyline. Yeah.
Exactly. So with Tony, I thought like his sacrifice was just so epic and it was so emotional to see him go, especially when he makes a snap and he's stumbling and then Spider-Man comes up to him and it's almost the exact reverse of what you see in Infinity War with the whole Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good scene. But this time it's Tony that's in trouble and Peter is the one that's kind of worried this time. And then Pepper Potts comes in and she knows what's just happened. She knows that, Tony, he finally had, it was finally his time to go. He'd escaped death ever since the very first Iron Man movie that launched off the MCU. But unfortunately, it was his time to go. So I guess in that regards, I was very satisfied with how they sent him off. I'm obviously super sad that Tony's, he's out of the MCU. Iron Man's dead and all that. But yeah, I guess I'd have to say, yeah, Iron Man. Definitely really satisfied with how they sent him off. But with Cap too, I was really happy to see him finally get that dance with Peggy. That was super emotional. That was very nice, and I love Cap. I always say that I'm an Iron Man fan, but I love Cap too. He's such a great dude, such a great character. Chris Evans really kills it in that role. So I guess those two got really good send-offs, I think. For me, just because of my personal bias, maybe I like the Iron Man one a little bit more, but definitely those two. What about you?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I feel like I have the same answer as you, except that I'm a Cap guy, and so am I. But that said, I mean, I really like the arc of the only arc that I really felt was just okay in all these really great arcs was Rocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Rocket kind of got I don't want to say pushed to the side, but it wasn't like he had as pivotal of a role in Endgame as you might think.
That's true.
I don't know. Yeah.
Sorry, you finish.
I was just gonna say, like, I feel like everyone else got like a really good arc, and he was just like, okay,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like the Guardians in especially Infinity War and Endgame, it would have been nice to see them play a little bit of a bigger role. I know obviously Rocket was there with Thor, and so was Groot when they were making Stormbreaker, and that was a huge help in Infinity War in the final battle. But it was almost like the whole Guardians team got sidelined a little bit. Gamora played a big role in Infinity War because that was how Thanos got the stone. But from a hero's perspective, and how much can they do to stop the bad guy, they didn't do like a whole lot. It was more like Nebula in Endgame that did. That was really cool to see Nebula play such a big role. And I know me and you have talked about how Star-Lord really messed things up at the end of Infinity War, and I know everyone out there online was clowning on Star-Lord for fucking that up, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess to piggyback off of that just a little bit. Yo, low-key, like, when you look at Infinity War and Endgame combined, like, low-key, Nebula was like a silent fucking G.
Right?
Like, the fact that
she's
she,
the dark
in
horse.
some ways, if you think about it, she is kind of what starts Thanos' quest for the stones, because she has that conversation with Gamora about finding the Soul Stone, and then she almost kills Thanos on his ship, and then he realizes that he can find the Soul Stone. So I think that's an interesting little nugget. Dude. The more I think about this, I'm like, damn, like you and I could low-key have like our own podcast about Infinity War and Endgame. Like there's literally just so much to talk about. But I guess my question for you is post Endgame.
Yeah.
Which character, I guess any character, do you think are you most curious to see which direction they go? Or what kind of stories they can tell with that character?
Okay, let's see.
Oh, and by the way, I just want to point out, I know I said Rocket had a okay arc. Low key, I don't want to sound like a hater here because I actually like this character and I like the actor. But I was actually happy with the fact that Captain Marvel had a pretty small role.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because if she were there in the time heist, it might have been a little too easy.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But see, that's the thing about that character, because she's so powerful that, and I've seen a bunch of online videos on this where the excuse of Captain Marvel, and when you really think about it, though, it is a very good excuse. Her saying that, not every single planet out there like Earth has the Avengers. Mm-hmm. There's other worlds out there that got affected by the snap that need her help too. And so just simply because we don't see all of her contributions throughout the entire galaxy, some people online were kind of saying like, oh, that was kind of a silly way to be like, hey, Captain Marvel, like, we need your help. And her response was just basically like, oh, sorry, guys, like, I'm busy, can't help you fight Thanos. But when you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, like, someone definitely has to be out there patrolling.
Oh, absolutely.
All the other planets safe. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, it was if she was in the time heist, definitely she could have blasted her way through everything.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Sorry. Back to the question.
Yeah, back to your question. Most excited to see going forward. And I don't know if we'll have time to talk about this. Maybe for a future episode, or maybe if we have some time at the end of this. You know me. Aside from Iron Man, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. No spoilers here for Far From Home if you guys have, or spoiler warning. But Far From Home. We both saw that. That was a really cool movie, and I'm really excited to see what they're gonna do with Peter Parker, given that dope post-credit scene. Can we say what happened in that post-credit scene? Is that?
Yeah, sure. I assume
your call.
Yeah. I assume if anyone's listening this far in, they're probably like a serious. They've been keeping up with the movies.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So definitely with Peter Parker's identity being revealed as Spider-Man. I'm so hyped to see where they're going to go with that, because there's just so much they could do now. Because when you think about it, it was really cool that in the first Iron Man movie, Tony reveals his identity as Iron Man.
Yeah.
And, given that Tony mentored Peter pretty much, and in Far From Home, they were kind of saying like, yo, Spider-Man, you got to step up as like, who's going to be the next Iron Man? Who's going to fill his shoes, right? That was a big part of Far From Home.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a cool little nugget to see that, oh, shoot, now Peter Parker's identity's out there. He's going to have to deal with being a superhero. And I guess I don't want to say obviously not a celebrity, because they think he's a menace. Spider-Man's a menace. So he's going to have to deal with, I guess, the negative consequences of being in the spotlight, because Tony Stark dealt with the positive. You know, people loved him. A lot of people hated him within the MCU, in the movies, obviously. But, you know, Peter Parker is going to have to deal with all the hate and the backlash that he's going to get. So that'll be really cool to see going forward. I think another one, though, that'd be really dope is Doctor Strange, just because there's so much mystic stuff that they could do with him, and who knows who the next bad guy is going to be. There's been a lot of rumors. But if there's anyone, definitely Doctor Strange could be someone that I'm really hyped to see with where they're going to go forward with his stories.
Yeah. I guess to answer the question, to give kind of two different answers and takes, I'm going to go back. Once again, I have to give a disclaimer. I am an absolute sucker for Hawkeye. So I am curious to see what this Disney Plus series has in store for him. It could go a lot of different ways. I'm hearing that it might be him mentoring the next Hawkeye.
Okay.
Or it could be, I'm also hearing that it could be him essentially dealing with the repercussions of his time as Ronin, where there's a lot of criminals that are like, yo, that guy, you know, he got rid of this one cartel that was our supplier. They got rid of this other associate. Like, there's that, and the fact that his family's back now. Obviously, he doesn't want to be jammed up in that life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really interesting. And I've always felt like Hawkeye was the perfect guy to have like a TV series on, because the most successful Marvel like TV series, like the ones on Netflix, they're more kind of street level, like not grand scale, very, you know, like kind of street level, a little darker, you know, stories that are more driven. Like the action is more just like
more human stories,
more human to human combat, you know, that kind of thing, and human stories. So I'm really curious to see what happens with Hawkeye there. But the other character would be Black Panther, and here's why. You think about it, Black Panther and half the Wakandans got dusted. Someone had to take over as king.
That's true.
And now all of a sudden, they're like you said, their home turf got absolutely just, not devastated, but there was quite a throwdown on their turf.
It got fudged up. It got fudged up for sure.
Yeah, so they had to repair. They were, you know, like, you know how when we study history, there's war, and then there's the reconstruction of, you know, after the war. Like there's reparations, and you have to reestablish.
There's a power vacuum in Wakanda.
Exactly. So I think that could be a fascinating dynamic to explore, where he's all of a sudden back with, you know, half these with a bunch of other people that got dusted. But there's already 5 years have passed, and so there's probably new rules, new policies, new regime. Period. So
Maybe the Jabari.
Yeah. Shout out to Winston Duke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one thing I'm really curious. Dude, when he dabs up T'Challa in Infinity War as they're lining up, that shit gets me every time. That is the shit I live for, man. But yeah, so I'd be very curious to see how they want to explore that little time jump.
Yeah.
Another guess. This is taking it back to Infinity War, but one question I will throw at you is, I really think that, and I don't want to sound. I might not have too much. I might sound incredibly biased because I am such a fan, but like I really do think that Thanos is one of the most iconic villains like ever.
For sure.
Who's he up there with? The Joker.
He's up there with Vader. Yeah.
Vader, the Joker. I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of like more iconic villain roles, and like I don't know. Like, what's crazy to me about Infinity War is that they made this movie, they centered it around this purple alien who was collecting rocks.
Yeah.
And they made it a story where it was like, yes, he's doing something that's like, you know, obviously not real.
Yeah.
But it's like, at its core, they made it such a grounded, like emotionally speaking, like story about him, you know, obviously seeing the decimation of Titan. And like, look, I was not rooting for Thanos by any means.
Yeah.
But that when he snaps, and then he ends up in the Soul World, and he talks to the young Gamora. I think that scene is actually so underrated, because there's that look on his face where you're like, okay, this dude is an awful dude who see the look on his face as he sees the younger version of his dog. It's just like shit. He's like he has emotions. Like he's not just this twiddle your fingers, I'm going to destroy the world type of guy. And then Gamora obviously asks him, did you do it? What did it cost? And then he looks so defeated, but yet even though he's accomplished his goal, and he just says, and by the way, great performance from Josh Brolin.
Oh yeah.
But then he just says everything.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know, there's just something about that exchange and the way he delivers it and the way he sells it. Like, I don't know. I really think it's a great performance by Brolin and like incredible writing by the two writers, Marcus and McFeely. Just like shit. Like, I don't know. Like to me, when I tell my kids about the best villains that I ever saw, like the best antagonists or protagonists, depending on how you want to look at it. Like, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to say anybody's topping Thanos. For me personally.
I think it's just really cool because, like everyone has said, Infinity War was about Thanos. And I think at the end, you even hear that it says at the end of the credits that Thanos will return. Yeah, it's not like so and so hero will return. It's Thanos will return. Yeah. And so I think definitely I agree with you that he's up there as one of the top all-time villains. And I think it's also really cool that, I think one of the big, because you know me, I'm a big Star Wars guy. I think a big reason why Vader is up there as a top all-time villain is because he had a redemption arc in Star Wars. He was the chosen one as Anakin Skywalker. And I don't mean to get too much into Star Wars here. I know we're talking about Marvel, but he was the chosen one as Anakin Skywalker. He fell down to the point of becoming Darth Vader, the most evil being in the galaxy. And in Return of the Jedi, he kills the Emperor. And he saves his son, basically. And so I think that's what makes Vader a very likable villain, and an iconic villain. But with Thanos, he's also, and I use the term likable lightly with Thanos, just because he is such an evil guy and he's done so much harm to the universe and to the characters. But at his core, like you were saying, like he thinks he's doing something good. He's not just out here searching for power. And I think that's what makes him such a complex villain, is because he's not trying to take over the world or anything here. He's trying to, in his eyes, make the world a better place because he's seen what has happened with overpopulation and all that. And so I think that was a very, very cool dynamic that they took with Thanos. And so, I fully agree with you there.
Yeah, and just one quick point I want to make. One thing that really that made me think like shit, like I don't agree with this dude at all, but like I can see why he is the way he is that scene between him and Gamora where he's talking about it. He says like it's a simple calculus. This universe is finite, And then Gamora says, you don't know that. And then he looks like the delivery and the acting from Josh Brolin. He says, he gets really defensive and he says, I'm the only one who knows that. Yeah. Or at least I'm the only one with the will to act on it. Yeah. And I'm like, shit, like that really sold me on like, okay, yes, if you don't know, I don't really think anybody agrees with his ideology, but it's like, shit, like, he really does think he is the hero of his own story.
Yeah.
And you can understand why he feels that way.
Yeah.
So I think the way they do that is absolutely incredible.
And also,
go ahead.
I was going to say also, I thought it was really cool what they did in Endgame by bringing back Thanos, because obviously he gets killed because, the main timeline, MCU Thanos gets killed off within the first 15 minutes of the film. And that was the Infinity War Thanos that we got to know. And from a certain point of view, Thanos was obviously the big bad of Infinity War and Endgame. But like we were just saying, Thanos was the main character of Infinity War. It was a story about Thanos. And when you're watching Infinity War, and also to touch back onto the scene that you were talking about where he sees young Gamora and he's just super sad about what he's just done, even though he accomplished his goal. Even though he accomplished his goal, you kind of see that, he's again, I'm using the term likable again, he becomes a likable villain. But in Endgame, when they go back to the 2014 version of Thanos, he becomes a much more evil version of Thanos, And at that point, you're able to fully get on board. Not that I wasn't on board with the heroes in Infinity War of them trying to stop Thanos, but in Endgame, like, you're very much more like, I really hate this version of Thanos, because he even says it like, I've seen now that my plan's not going to work. Now I've just got to dust everything and build the world in my own vision. And that becomes a much more classic evil villain. I'm trying to take over the world. Yeah. And when he finally gets defeated, it's so much more rewarding, I think.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, that's a great point that you bring up. That like, that definitely is the more traditional, villain.
Yeah.
Mindset, but at the same time, you see the development of how he ends up there.
Exactly.
Obviously, it's a younger version of himself that sees his future succeeding, and yet people are trying to undo his success.
Exactly.
So I think that's definitely really cool. A couple to get into some final discussion points.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact. About 2 years ago from today, like 2 years ago, so around this time period in 2017, the Russo brothers went to D23 in San Diego Comic-Con, and they showed their first 4-minute trailer, but it was a rough cut of just them teasing Infinity War. And I remember 2 years ago being like, holy shit, this is happening. And I remember that watching those grainy footage that's someone recording with their phone on and then putting it on YouTube only to get it removed within like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I remember watching that and being like, holy shit, this is happening. This is fucking happening. Oh my God. What am I going to do? Oh my God. And then obviously now that we've had Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, tell me if you agree with this or not. I guess there's two thoughts I have. One is, I don't know if they're ever going to be able to build up to that level of anticipation for another movie. And then B, low key, no pun intended. I actually don't want there to be an Avengers 5. What do you think?
Really? You don't want there to be an Avengers 5?
I don't want an Avengers 5, and I don't think there's ever going to be anything that'll top the hype meter of Infinity War / Endgame.
Okay. I mean, I think that's you don't want to see an Avengers 5, bro? I feel like that's a hot take. I mean,
I'll explain myself in a second. I'll explain myself in a second.
I'm trying to put myself in your I mean, I see where you're coming from. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes here. I think what Marvel did with these films leading up to Endgame and with the culmination of Endgame was unprecedented. To have all these separate superhero films come together and to have these kinds of story arcs and these conclusions for these characters that we've loved over the last like decade or so is just unprecedented. So I do see where you're saying where you don't think that there's going to be that much hype that can be built up again, because if they try to do this again and build up to like, let's call it like Endgame 2, another kind of like 22 films where they're building up to a big bad and they're going to have to fight this with the culmination of all these heroes. It's going to be like, oh, okay, like we've seen this before with Endgame, from Iron Man to Endgame, we've kind of seen this before. So in that regard, I definitely see where you're coming from, where they put themselves in a tough spot where they're going to have to try to best themselves. They're going to have to try to beat their own hype. But with that being said, though, I still think there's so many cool stories that we can see. So maybe not necessarily like an Avengers 5 where like definitely they're going to have to change it up in terms of how they're going to build up to it. But maybe something else where there's like a different kind of cosmic threat. There's a lot of rumors as to like what the next big threat's going to be for our heroes in the MCU to fight. So maybe something like that. But yeah, I mean, it'd be definitely cool to see another ensemble, like a bunch more ensemble films.
I'm not opposed. Okay, I'm not opposed to the ensemble. But I think you cannot call a movie Avengers 5. You cannot call a movie Avengers 5. Okay. The Avengers, if you think about it, Infinity War wasn't even really an Avengers movie. Yeah. I'm going to just put that out on the record. But so, like you said, it sounded like you agreed with me in that it'll be really hard to build up the level of anticipation and whatnot that they had going for this Infinity Saga. But my main thought is like the Avengers are this original group of 6 that Nick Fury brought together.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that story has been told.
Gotcha. Okay, I see what you're saying.
The Endgame was about them delivering one last success for Earth with the help of Ant-Man, the Guardians, a little bit of Carol Danvers. But I don't know. Like, to me, the way I see it is like the team, the Avengers, that's retired.
Gotcha. Okay. Like, in that regard, I fully agree. Yeah.
3 of them are gone.
Yeah.
Hawkeye's with his family. I'm about to talk about Hulk in just a second. And then Thor's probably going to be out in space, like, enjoying life. And you could tell a great story about Thor, but it won't be as big in scale, I wouldn't think. But yeah. I don't know. Like, to me, Endgame really does feel like the end of something. And I personally think that if they were going to just slap on the Avengers name to get more people in seats, I think that would be very ungenuine to the storytelling.
I agree. And I think, okay, in that regard, where we're thinking of the Avengers as like the OG characters that we had in that very first Avengers film, then I fully agree with what you're saying there. I was just kind of thinking, like, these team ups and all that. Like, we still definitely want to see that. So
yeah, I'm all for the team up. I'm all for the team up.
Gotcha.
Speaking of a potential Avengers 5, as I alluded to earlier in the podcast, San Diego Marvel's going to present some stuff at San Diego Comic-Con this weekend. So
hype.
Let's you and we already know. Let's play a fun little game where we just kind of rattle off, or let's just kind of talk through like what might Phase 4 look like. So we already know there's a Black Widow prequel.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of different Disney Plus streaming series, which I'm curious to see. Seems like there's going to be Black Panther 2, Doctor Strange 2.
Yep. We got Guardians 3, Thor 4.
Do we get an Ant-Man 3? I want one.
I want an Ant-Man 3, but for whatever reason, like, Ant-Man doesn't get enough hype. You know what I mean? Like, he's such a cool character, and he does get, like, he has his fans, but I feel like as a whole, like, and it's also when Ant-Man first came out, like, not a lot of people, like, the hardcore fans will know the character, but for people who just, like, the average fan who sees him as a character, they're kind of like, all right, this guy just can make himself really small. Like, what's so cool about that, right? Yeah. When his movie came out, I think obviously it did really well, but it'd be cool to see him get a little bit more hype, get a little bit more credit. And then also when Ant-Man and the Wasp came out, they had to follow up Infinity War. So that was also a tough spot to fill. And I think that movie went a little bit underrated because they were like, we just saw this huge hardcore film, Infinity War, where the heroes lost. And now we're going to go watch Ant-Man and the Wasp where it's like that. But I would love to see an Ant-Man 3 too. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. The thing I was saying about Hulk is that, so it turns out Mark Ruffalo has one more film in his Marvel contract.
Oh.
And Kevin Feige says that they're not done with Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner just yet.
Okay.
Which had me curious because I felt like his arc kind of came to a close, as in, like, it came, obviously the main conflict between Banner and the Hulk got solved. Yeah. So I'd just be curious, like, how can Banner pop up one last time?
I mean, Banner has always been, Mark Ruffalo and the Hulk has always been in like a kind of a tough spot because he did have like his own film, but it wasn't even Mark Ruffalo. Yeah. And like Hulk had like a bunch of his own films back in the early 2000s, but none of them is really like the Hulk that we know today. And the Hulk is such a popular character. And now you might know a little bit more about this than I do. I really don't have any knowledge of this, but is there a reason why they can't do like a Hulk solo film? Like, why was that?
It's because the solo film rights belong to Universal, but they can have him in Marvel, in like the Disney movies, the Disney-owned movie. Yeah.
Gotcha. So maybe we'll see with Thor in Thor 4. That's
what I was actually thinking. Like, I don't know, like one last tango between Hemsworth and good old Ruffalo.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, like, what are obviously the main things we think of are like things they've either announced or like sequels to, franchises that are still going along. I assume there's probably going to be a Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
My question to you is like, you alluded to earlier, and I think you and I both wouldn't mind seeing another team up, but what does that team up entail? Is it just whoever's left? Is it like only the cream of the crop? Like,
they might introduce some new characters. Like I know there's been talks of like Nova, like a Nova movie, or maybe Adam Warlock's out there in the MCU somewhere. Yeah. He's growing somewhere in that little pod. Who else is there that's out there? Aren't they doing an Eternals movie with potentially Keanu Reeves, Angelina Jolie?
Yeah, and low-key, like I know nothing about the Eternals.
Me neither, yeah.
And they also just got the rights to X-Men.
Yeah, that's also very true.
And fan forced
Avengers versus X-Men.
So, okay, closing thought, I guess, but it sounded like, based on just some YouTube videos I saw, it sounded like they could build to this storyline called Secret Wars.
Oh yeah,
saw
with
this?
The Skrulls.
Yeah.
But see, that's also a tough spot because within the MCU and the whole Secret Wars storyline wasn't that a Skrull invasion of planet Earth?
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of a dicey spot because in Captain Marvel, you're like, all right, the Skrulls are the bad guys. Like, we're trying to stop them. But then you're kind of like, okay, the Skrulls are the good guys. And especially with the post-credit scene in Far From Home, you're like, okay, the Skrulls must be really, really good guys if Nick Fury's willing to trust Talos to fill his shoes for Forgotten. That's a whole nother thing that we could have talked about was that how long has Nick Fury not been on planet Earth? You know, which is really cool to think about. I actually saw, I don't mean to get on too much of a tangent here because I know you're trying to wrap up, but I saw a really cool video where they were trying to break down, how long has Nick Fury not been Nick Fury? And I saw one video that said potentially it could have been as far back as Age of Ultron, because if you watch Captain Marvel, when Carol Danvers is trying to see if Nick Fury is a Skrull or not, she's like, Skrulls can, I think she says something along the lines of like, Skrulls can like inherit how you look and some of your recent memories, but they're not actually going to know who you are. And so Nick Fury's throwing off a couple fun facts about him. And he's saying, if my toast is cut diagonally, I can't eat it, or something like that, right? But if you watch in Age of Ultron, when Nick Fury pops up in that little shack where Iron Man is, they all go inside Hawkeye's kitchen, and Nick Fury's eating toast, but that toast is cut diagonally. So, how long has Nick Fury been out there? We don't know.
Blew my mind.
Yeah, I'll send you the link to that video.
Holy shit! Wait, I gotta rewatch that.
Yep, he's eating toast. He's eating some kind of sandwich that's cut diagonally, and Nick Fury specifically says he does not eat his toast diagonally cut. So, who knows? Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, getting back to your point, where if they do a Secret War storyline, it's going to be so much flip-flopping with the Skrulls, where it's like, I thought they were bad, then I thought they were good, but then now they're really bad again. So, but who knows? We'll see what they do.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I don't know if they're ever going to be able to build up to anything like Infinity War ever again. Mm-hmm. I mean, hey, if they did, I'm not mad, but I just don't know how feasible that is. So I'm not going to place that unfair expectation. So, damn, no, you got to send me that link to the diagonal toast.
I definitely.
But, okay, so just to last two very quick points. Speaking of Nick Fury, I personally found it kind of a geek that in Winter Soldier he says, the last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye. And then in Captain Marvel, you find out it's just
I know.
Oh, come here, little kitty, and then I found that hilarious. If you go back to that clip from Winter Soldier on YouTube and you go through the comments, there are so many people just crapping on Nick Fury's how tough, they're like, wow, I used to think Fury was way more of a badass from this scene until I realized it was a cat.
Yeah.
But so that's the first quick fun little note. Second is before I kind of let you go, because I don't want to hold you up too long. Like I said earlier, I feel like we could have our own podcast series, honestly, just talking about Marvel. So what I want to ask you is, do you want to? We should podcast again after the Marvel San Diego Comic-Con announcements.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see if they are gonna announce like a Secret Word or something of that scale. Like, are they gonna do it on whatever Saturday in Hall H? Like,
Yeah,
I'd be very curious to see. Like,
there's gonna be a lot to talk about.
Dude, wait, low key, I wasn't even thinking that much about Comic-Con. And now that we've been talking a little bit, I'm like, holy shit, this could be a big Saturday for us. We
definitely, this is kind of off topic here. It's still related to Marvel, but we definitely need to hit up one of those Comic-Cons together because for the listeners, you know, I've sent Matt these pictures already, but I recently got a pretty dope costume, a nice little Spider-Man costume, so it'd be a cool way to use that, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so no, let's keep doing Marvel podcasts. We'll talk off air about, you know, maybe some branding and some planning we could do. But
I'll be so hyped for that.
Yeah, no, I mean if you'll come back on, like I'm more than happy to have you back on.
I love being on your podcast.
Yeah, great. Okay, we'll talk off air about that. But I just want to say to the listeners, thank you again for listening, and you know what, as per usual, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, eventually Spotify, or whatever medium you're listening to this on, and leave a good review. It means a lot. And do my good friend and our wonderful guest here, Nathan, a favor and check out his podcast. Like I said, you can find it on Spotify, the Brunch Bros podcast. Give that a listen, give that a subscribe. Once again, I want to thank you again, Nathan, for joining me. I'll talk to you really soon, man.
Always
talk to you really soon.
Thank you. Thanks so much, guys.